Imagine that you are a diver in the open ocean. You are all alone and there is no boat nearby. All you see is blue water in every direction. And then you spot something that looks downright terrifying. It's a large black shape and it's moving towards you, fast. Immediately, you turn away, ready to swim away, but it catches up with you. For a moment, you are scared that it wants to kill you. After all, a creature with sharp, pointed teeth can't be hunting you down for any other reason. But then, you notice that stuck in between its teeth is a fish, and it offers it to you. That's where this story begins. This wild apex predator, an animal that sits at the very top of the ocean food chain, has just chosen to share its meal with a completely different species, for no logical reason whatsoever. This wasn't a dolphin doing dolphin things. This wasn't a sea lion being playful. The animal looking at you was a false killer whale, one of the most powerful predators in the open ocean, an animal built to hunt, kill, and dominate. And it just, well, decided not to. The false killer whale shouldn't behave this way. It has 44 large, conical, and sharp teeth that can tear and even skin any prey of its choice. It can swim at speeds up to 29 kilometers per hour, 18 miles per hour, and dive to depths exceeding 3,000 feet, which is way faster than most fish. From all angles, this should be one of the predator with the highest kill rates. But the false killer whale has just decided not to. And the question is, why? Why doesn't this species follow the rules of what we would consider normal animal behavior? Why is it that this cetacean can kill almost any fish if it wanted to choose to share food with other beings? Before we answer that, a quick note. We started this channel because there are thousands of incredible stories hiding in plain sight across our planet. Animals, places, and discoveries that completely change the way we see the natural world. If that's the kind of thing you enjoy, consider subscribing. It's free and it genuinely helps us keep making videos like this. Alright. Let's start with the name, because even that is wrong. False killer whale. It sounds like something a 5-year-old made up after learning about orcas. And in a way, the name itself is the first clue that scientists didn't really know what to do with this animal either. It's not a killer whale, it's not pretending to be one. The false part comes from the shape of its skull, specifically certain bones in its skull that structurally resemble those of the orca. That's it, that's the entire reason. A bone resemblance. It was named in 1846, and the name it was given was based purely on a skull found on a beach, before anyone had even seen a living one. So if it's not a whale and it doesn't possess the killer instincts of a whale, then what exactly is this creature? Well, the false killer whale, Pseudorca cracidens, is technically a dolphin. And I mean that taxonomically and biologically it belongs to the oceanic dolphin family. But unlike most dolphins that leap alongside boats in the tropics, the false killer whale can reach 20 feet in length and weigh up to 1,500 pounds. And it hunts. Juvenile sharks and large predatory fish. So, with the false killer whales, you have an animal that is, by scientific classification, a dolphin, but looks like a slimmed-down orca, hunts like an apex predator, and behaves like neither. It occupies this strange evolutionary no man's land where every category you try to place it in immediately breaks down. It's too big to feel like a dolphin. It's too different to be a whale, and it's too socially complex to be just another predator. I'm not saying this predator has a rank of its own, but if you were to think that, you won't be totally wrong. Because while most fish, like the great white shark, will be unable to see in the darkest part of the ocean, the false killer whale operates flawlessly in complete darkness. It emits acoustic clicks and interprets the returning echoes. They can see inside objects, accurately assessing a fish's size, speed, and exact skeletal structure from hundreds of yards away, meaning that even in the abyss, they can still hunt and survive. So why is this powerful hunter sharing food with other species? Why is it approaching humans not with aggression, but with what looks disturbingly like curiosity? Predators don't do that. Apex predators especially don't do that. A great white shark does not offer you a fish. An orca does not pause a hunt to check if you're okay. The entire logic of being at the top of a food chain is that you don't need to cooperate with anything beneath you. But the false killer whale keeps breaking that logic over and over again. And the deeper scientists look, the more they realize that the name false killer whale might be more accurate than anyone intended, just not in the way they thought. Now don't get me wrong, this animal's not just a false version of a killer whale. No, it's something much worse. It's a predator that doesn't fully act like a predator, a dolphin that doesn't fully act like a dolphin, An animal that, the more you study it, seems to be operating by a completely different set of rules than everything else in the ocean. The question is, what are those rules, and why does an animal this powerful even need them? So far, all you have heard is just biology. It can simply be explained by evolution. But what scientists noticed couldn't be explained so easily. And then something happened that marine biologists still struggle to explain. Not because it was impossible, but because it didn't fit any existing model of predator behavior. Researchers began documenting behavior that looked less like instinct and more like a deliberate choice. And if that was correct, then the false killer whale wasn't just breaking the rules of predator behavior, it was breaking rules that most animals aren't even supposed to understand. What happened next is the reason some marine biologists still ask, what exactly is going on inside the mind of this animal? This question was first asked after the incident that happened in 2012. In 2012, a researcher named Sabrina Benchijane was diving off the coast of French Polynesia when a false killer whale approached her. It wasn't alone, it was mid-hunt, actively carrying a freshly caught mahi-mahi in its jaws. The animal swam directly toward her, slowed down, and pushed the fish toward her face. When she didn't take it, it circled back and offered it again. This has now been documented multiple times across multiple ocean regions with multiple divers. Now, I know what I'm saying may not make sense, but let's just analyze this further. This animal will spend hours and so much energy hunting, and then it will catch prey. But instead of eating it, it goes out of its way to find a member of a different species and shares it. That is not predator logic. That is not even most animals' logic. The only framework we have for that kind of behavior is a social one, a deeply, surprisingly sophisticated social one. But food sharing is just where the strangeness starts. False killer whales are cooperative hunters, which alone isn't, well, unusual. After all, orcas do it. Dolphins even do it. But what makes false killer whales different is who they cooperate with. They have been documented hunting alongside bottlenose dolphins in coordinated group strategies, not just swimming near them, but actively coordinating. They adjust position and even respond to each other's movements in real time. They hunt together. And then, when the hunt is over, they share the food voluntarily. Orcas don't do that. Orcas don't invite another species to join the operation and then share the profits. That kind of cooperation requires something that goes beyond hunting instinct. It requires trust, and trust between two different species in the open ocean with no enforcement mechanism, no shared history, no reason to expect fairness. That shouldn't exist. At this point, you're probably asking, okay, maybe this is just learned behavior. Maybe they figured out that teaming up gets more fish, so they do it for purely selfish reasons. That would be the logical, clean explanation. Predators are smart, and this is a smart choice. Except then, you run into the adoption cases and the clear explanation falls apart completely. False killer whales have been documented adopting calves from other species. This act of adoption costs energy. It provides no genetic return, and quite frankly, it makes no logical sense if you think of this animal purely as a killing machine optimized for survival. But is the false killer whale even a killing machine? Because the truth is, we have barely studied them. You see, false killer whales live in deep, open ocean, not near coastlines where researchers can easily observe them. So most of what we know comes from strandings, rare surface encounters, and a handful of dedicated research programs. We are, in the most literal sense, working with fragments, and even the fragments don't add up. But the more data that comes in, the more the same question keeps surfacing. Why would an apex predator, an animal that needs nothing from other species, keep choosing connection over isolation? You would think that that is the right question, right? Well, no. The right question is, what if this animal isn't behaving strangely, despite being intelligent? Up until now, we've been assuming these behaviors need an explanation. But what if that's the wrong assumption? What if the strange behavior is the intelligence? Think about the animals we already accept as smart. Chimpanzees remember faces for decades. Elephants travel miles to grieve at the bones of a dead relative. Crows hold grudges. We accept all of that because we've watched them long enough. We have the footage, we have the studies, we've had time to get comfortable with the idea. Nobody has had that time with false killer whales, but we have noticed one strange thing from studying them. When one of their group is injured, the others don't leave. They stay even when there is nothing practical to gain and everything to lose by staying in open water that long. We have a word for that. When humans do it, we call it loyalty, love. We're very uncomfortable using those words for animals, but science prefers clearer explanations. But the clearer explanations keep falling short with this animal, and it gets stranger. False killer whales have been documented approaching research boats not to check for food, but to look at the people. But this behavior isn't fully strange. It's why a chimpanzee may stare at you when you go to the zoo. But what exactly is an apex predator doing being curious about a human? Let's compare it to an animal with similar power and predatory status, the tiger shark. A tiger shark doesn't linger. It doesn't make eye contact out of curiosity. It assesses, decides, and moves because that's what predators do. They are built for efficiency, not wonder. The false killer whale keeps stopping to wonder, and I don't know about you, but there's something deeply unsettling about an apex predator deciding you're worth studying. Because when a deer stares at you, you assume it's cautious. When a dog stares at you, you assume it's curious. But when a predator at the top of the food chain locks onto you and refuses to look away, what exactly is happening inside its mind? Is it evaluating a threat, a potential meal, or something else entirely? But all of this leads to a far stranger question. What exactly is going on behind those eyes when a false killer whale looks at you underwater, really looks at you, sustained, unhurried, direct? Researchers don't have a clear explanation for what's happening behind those eyes. They do have data and years of note, but none of it fully answers the question. What is happening in there? Well, what we do know is this. False killer whales maintain individual friendships that survive months of separation. They split apart, travel alone, and when they find each other again, the bond is still there. For humans, this behavior is normal, but for wild animals, it's not. And this creates a huge problem. How is it possible that this extraordinary predator can remember its buddy from years ago so perfectly? While trying to answer this question, scientists entered a dangerous territory. The more they observe false killer whales, the harder it becomes to explain their behavior using simple instinct. And then things became very strange. They noticed that specific groups of false killer whales produce vocalizations that no other population in the world makes. These were not variations. They were completely distinct patterns, learned, maintained, and deliberately passed down from one generation to the next by teaching. That is a dialect. And a dialect doesn't just mean communication, it means identity. It means this group has a sound that says we, and they've been protecting it long enough to hand it to their children. We know of almost no species on Earth where that happens, which raises a question science hasn't cleanly answered yet. If they have culture, if they have long-term memory, if they have relationships that outlast absence, what else are they carrying around in there that we haven't found yet? So far, this animal has done everything that makes no sense for a predator. It shares food, it cooperates with other species, it even seems to recognize individuals across time. Cool. But none of that matters the moment the hunt begins, because then a completely different version of it appears, one that doesn't negotiate, doesn't hesitate, and doesn't cooperate. So what exactly is the false killer whale capable of killing? False killer whales hunt blue marlin, a marine mammal that exceeds 1,000 pounds, moves like a torpedo, and carries a literal spear on its face. Most predators won't touch it because, well, just look at it. But false killer whales target it deliberately and win. But after the hunt, they share the food with the bottlenose dolphins they hunted alongside. And the false killer whale, always the most powerful animal at that hunt, waits for the other species to eat first. It makes you wonder, why would the apex predator wait? Well, nothing forces it to. No animal can make it do that. It just chooses to. And this makes it extremely dangerous. Not in the way we expect, but in a way that we don't have an explanation for yet. And I get it. This remarkable animal is very strange. But you are probably asking, why does any of this matter? It's a large dolphin in the middle of the ocean. Fascinating, sure. But why should I care? Well, this strange life being directly affects your economy. You see, for centuries, we built a very clean picture of how animal minds work. With instinct at the bottom, learned behavior in the middle, and understanding at the top, something we reserved just for humans, we put that category at the top and assumed almost nothing else could reach it. The false killer whale has been quietly living inside that category the whole time. We just weren't looking. And if the false killer whale could do it, then what does this mean for other animals that we have confidently filed away as just an animal? If a species this poorly studied, this rarely observed, this far outside our research spotlight is showing empathy, culture, grief, and cross-species cooperation, how many others are doing the same thing in oceans and forests and skies we haven't looked at closely enough? The false killer whale doesn't just challenge what we know about dolphins, it challenges the entire framework we use to decide what counts as a mind worth taking seriously. There's also something more immediate at stake. False killer whale populations are declining. Some populations in Hawaii are now considered endangered, and we are watching an animal of potentially profound intelligence disappear from the ocean while we're still in the first chapter of understanding what it actually is. So here's where we land. An animal named after a skull on a beach, classified as a dolphin that hunts like an apex predator, observed sharing food across species lines, mourning its dead, teaching its children a language no other population speaks, and looking at human beings with something that, in any other context, we would simply call curiosity. The ocean is 71% of this planet. We have explored less than 20% of it. And in the fraction we have managed to study, we found this: an animal that doesn't fit, that refuses every category we build for it, that keeps doing things our frameworks weren't designed to explain. Maybe the false killer whale isn't the strange one. Maybe we've simply spent centuries forcing nature into categories that were never large enough to contain it. Somewhere in the open ocean tonight, one of these animals is hunting in complete darkness. It may share its food. It may recognize an old companion after years apart. It may pass traditions from one generation to the next. And it may be doing all of this in a world we've barely begun to understand. Not because it's trying to surprise us, but because nature has never been under any obligation to make sense to us. And if false killer whales challenge what we think intelligence looks like, there may be another animal that challenges something even more fundamental.